Okay, we're live.
That's what I'm told.
Okay. Hello, so I'm Dr. Iris Ruiz, and I am the current co-chair of the NCTE CCCC Latino Caucus. And I'm here today to interview Dr. Victor Villanueva from Washington State University. And we're going to be performing an interview that's going to contribute to the current Latino Caucus historiography project. And we'll be going through an interview with Victor, and I'll be asking him about 11 questions. But first, I'd like to give Dr. Villanueva the opportunity to introduce himself.
Hi. um, okay, I'm Victor Villanueva, and I'm a Regents Professor and Director of the University Writing Program at Washington State University. I've been at Washington State University since 1995. Prior to that, I was at Northern Arizona University. Prior to that, I was at University of Missouri, Kansas City. And prior to that, I was a graduate student at the University of Washington,
Wow.
Seattle. And I got to the Pacific Northwest by way of the Army and ended up liking it here. So I have now, even though I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, I have lived in the Pacific Northwest for most of the last 50 years.
Great.
There ain't much of a New Yorker left in this New Yorker, except to people who aren't New Yorkers. They all hear a New Yorker, but I go to New York. I'm way too slow for those people. So
you kind of assimilated a little bit to that area.
That's a dangerous word, but yeah.
I know. Bad word. Maybe it'll come up in our conversation. Why? Okay, well, cool. That's a great area. And thank you for agreeing to do this project with us today. Your voice is so very important in your opinion and your experience. So thank you for giving us your time today.
Thank you for saying all that.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Just with a basic question is, when and why did you choose to attend C's and or NCTE?
It's an and. The first time I went to 4Cs, it was in fact in New York City, which was really interesting because I left there a decidedly poor Puerto Rican high school dropout and came back a completing graduate student. So that was way cool, kind of mind-boggling actually. But I was there because one of my mentors, my key mentor, basically, Ann Ruggles-Gear, had put me on a panel as a respondent, a panel that she was on with Ann Matsuhashi at the time. She's Ann Feldman now, and Melanie Sperling. And so this is how one does this in this career, and that's what my boss told me. And she's been 4C's chair, and she's been NCTE president in her career. So that's why I went to 4C's the first time. I went to NCTE the first time because another mentor, William Ermshire, who had also been 4C's chair and NCTE president, and I think the second, maybe the third editor of 3Cs, had recommended me for a committee, and it was an NCTE committee, the resolutions committee, and so that's why I went off to NCTE. And for a good chunk of my career, I have attended both meetings. I stopped going to NCTE, I don't know, about 10 years ago or so. And I will probably do much less 4Cs from this point on also, because I'm getting up there in age. I wasn't born with a white beard. Yeah, that's why.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Why did you decide to join the caucus? Who was involved, and what did you sense was the importance of the caucus for others? What were your goals? What has been the role of the caucus in your career? I know that's a multifaceted question, so we'll just start off with why you decided to join the caucus and who was involved.
Yeah, well, Um, well, that's a funny story. And the thing is, I'm not sure whether it was at 4Cs or NCTE, but when I stopped to think about it. But somewhere along the way, we were in the Midwest someplace, maybe Minneapolis. I don't remember. And I was uh, looking for food. I was still a graduate student, and that's what we do at the conferences. We search for
True, very true.
so I was looking for food, and this Latina, Chris Gutierrez, kind of grabbed me by the collar. Actually, what she did was grab my name tag and told me to start looking around for others with Spanish names. I was just going to do what I was told. And if you would have seen Chris Gutierrez and were a man, you would too. So just okay, yes, ma'am. And so, as it turns out, we three then, it was Roseanne Gonzalez and Chris Gutierrez, have been doing a whole lot of Hispanic caucus stuff. And in fact, we're responsible for changing the name from Chicano caucus, which is what it had been, to Hispanic caucus. And then later we changed it, and I can tell you that story if you ask, to Latino caucus, because that was that happened in 97 in Phoenix. Anyhow, so we met. The Latino caucus had a meeting, and the meeting was the three of us. We were it. So did I think about, okay, what was the second half? What was the second question?
Basically, so that's how you got involved. And what did you sense was the importance of the caucus for yourself and for others?
Well, at the time, there weren't too many Latinos to speak of. And I mean, this is very different nowadays. And so, but what was clear was that we are here, we are a presence, whether we were recognized or not as a presence. And so it was clear that this needed to be done, if only to have our voices heard, even though the voices at that point amounted to three of us. And in fact, because there was only three of us, we extended the Latino caucus in those days to other folks of color. The Black caucus was already very, very highly well organized and well represented. It had even done a boycott in 4Cs, maybe the second Cs that I had gone to, about investment in South Africa, which at this time was still immersed in apartheid. So they were a highly organized unit already. But there was no other. So there were only the two caucuses, Hispanic caucus, Black caucus. And so since there were only the three of us, we became at that point the people of color, not Black caucus. We called ourselves Hispanic caucus, and our major concern was us, gente. But we also had Suzanne Benali, who was a Navajo, and Gail Okawa, who's still my friend. In fact, I'll be talking to her later today. And it stayed that way until 98. In 98, Paul Matsuda asked. He was very courteous. He asked. I was incoming chair of the organization, and he asked if we could put together and have a space for an Asian caucus. And then I think the American Indian, at the time it wasn't called American or Native American Caucus, it was called the American Indian Scholars and Intellectuals. And I think that began with somebody who had just been awarded the Scholars for the Dream that I was in charge of. And you won't recognize her name. It's Malia Powell.
Okay, no. Of course I know her.
So anyway, it was clear that our presence, and in terms of Latinos, and then I'll slow down. At that particular time, the single most known Latino in our business was Richard Rodriguez. And that was a problem. I grew to like him over time, but over time he changed his story.
Right.
The story changed when he came out that he was gay, and suddenly we knew that the big concerns he had with family was probably not about speaking damned English.
Mm.
But at the time, it was what is it? Hunger of Memory. And he was a keynote speaker at NCTE annual. There's a great story there too with Jaime Mejia joined in a couple of years later when he was a graduate student working with Andrea Lunsford in Ohio. And I don't remember what year. That was probably, I'm going to say that happened in 95 or 96. That Jaime joined in. But before that, it was just a handful of us. And that's that. So many stories to tell. Next question. Shoot.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So I want to make sure we finish that particular question. What do you think your goals were in being part of the caucus, and what has been the role of the caucus in your career?
Well, I think that the role of the caucus has remained steady, which is representation and voice within the organization and then within the profession at large. We are too readily dismissed as still, and all the way down to students, dismissed as the folks who have some sort of deficit. And our deficit is that we have abilities with more languages than the people who are in power, which is no deficit at all. It's an asset that refuses to be recognized. So at the time, however, if we go back to 1981 or 82, when I first joined the caucus, when we became the caucus, basically, what we wanted to do, and we ended up doing, was not only be a presence, but assure that we had a presence in these conferences, that we weren't dismissed or simply spoken about. At some point, you'll probably end up talking to Renee Moreno, and she can tell you that story as one of the very first. She was in the group of first 10 Scholars for the Dream. And I'm going to tell you the story right now, even though she'll tell you the story too. When she gave her panel presentation as a scholar for the Dream, somebody else on her panel just started carrying on with the same old stereotypes about Latinos, which Renee lost her temper over. But even with our presence, even standing right there, the stereotypes continued. So that was our job, to try to educate these educators about who the hell we are. And with all our complexities and contradictions. And that ends up beginning, I don't remember what year, but Miriam Chaplin starts the rainbow strand. And that was let's just say, a troublesome beginning at Urbana, just with people not being sure. I don't know if you're there anymore because you froze.
Oh, I froze? Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Anyhow, yeah. Okay, stop there.
All right. Thank you. So that was that, like you said, around in the 90s when you remember Renee's panel?
Renee's panel, well, shoot. You'd have to, the way to find that out is to go back to William F. Cook as chair of 4Cs.
Oh, okay.
And because what happened at the executive committee, I was a liaison on the committee. There used to be people from the executive committee would be liaisons with the officers. And there were the first two ever were Wendy Bishop, who died some years back, and me. Sue McLeod, who ended up being my boss at Four Cs, at WSU in the 90s, Sue McLeod had proposed Scholars for the Dream. So even though nobody wants to know this in the history, a white woman actually proposed it. And it was because there was something similar that NCTE was doing already.
Mm-hmm.
The executive committee voted for it. Bill Cook was chair, and he assigned me at that point to start doing it. And what we did was we sat in the lobby. We had all of these proposals for next year's 4Cs, the next year's 4Cs. And we sat in the lobby and looked through all of these proposals from folks of color that had to do with color and decided on the first 10, and Renee was among those. So it was highly informal. It became very, very formal over time. But at that time, it was just Bill Cook and me in one of those round couches that you see in hotels, just sitting in one of those things and then talking about what we're reading. And it included folks of color doing stereotypical stuff too, but it was pretty exciting. I don't remember what year. Bill Cook, who's now dead.
We'll definitely find out. Okay, thank you. I think you answered some of the third question already in terms of what you had witnessed. And that's fine, because you can always expand on stuff, as you have a lot of stories to share. So no problem at all. But maybe you can think of, some of the issues that you witnessed from both organizations, C's organizations and NCTE, such as marginalization of other Latinos, Latinas, or marginalization of research or publishing. So if you've witnessed anything like that, or do you want to speak on those issues as they relate to both organizations?
Well, it was less about publishing because there weren't that many of us out there. When you over at the NCTE side, there was Puerto Rican, I don't remember her name. There was Franquise y Dwyer, something de Dwyer.
Oh, yes,
Carlota.
Yeah, okay.
So, but they spoke mainly about, and Chris Gutierrez herself, although she was still a graduate student when she was in charge of the Hispanic caucus, and so was I. So here's the thing, Chris Gutierrez was in bilingual ed, and the other two were doing elementary or secondary school stuff. In the 4Cs, and Roseanne Gonzalez is a linguist.
Okay.
So in the 4Cs realm, the number of Latinos is the person you are looking at. I was it. Did I have trouble getting published? No, I didn't know how to publish. I was still a graduate student. My first essay came out my first it had to do with writing as a process or something. My first political essay, okay, it's that story, was about Richard Rodriguez, which was, I was at NCTE, and he was the keynote speaker, and he just quite infuriated me because, and that evening, talking about it with Jaime Mejia, Roseanne Gonzalez, Chris Gutierrez, what was her name? Aurelia de Silva. We were sitting in a circle talking about it, and I didn't understand they were telling me to shut up, but they kept saying, why don't you publish it? Which, that's code. I now know that that's code. Why don't you publish it? Meaning, I'm sick of hearing this thing. Go write it. Okay, so let's talk about, there have been good sides to it. At my very first 4Cs in 1981 or 82, I went to see Pat Mazzell, who was a new young thing too. And I went to see her because she was not a big name yet, but I went to see her because she was going to speak about Richard Rodriguez. At the panel, at the thing, she kind of singled me out and asked, was I right? She says, am I right? To me. And I just kind of said nothing. And so after the panel, she came up to me to ask why I said nothing. And I said that I think he is crying too much in his beer and is too assimilationist, that word, to be very helpful for us. When she published that essay, which is something about what happens to basic writers or something like that, she footnoted, she did a footnote, she cited me, even though I was nobody and this was just a conversation at a panel. So there was the respectful side, like Pat, and others, not just Pat. I mean, that I was there at all was because of people who took good care of me, like Ann Geer and Bill Ermsher, and others. Ann Feldman ended up being the local arrangements chair for My Four Cs, and so there were others. The negative thing, the biggest negative thing that happened was, and it is history. It's going to irritate some folks who see it, but it is what happened. Miriam Chaplin, then as chair of Cs on the executive committee, proposed the rainbow strand. When she first proposed it, it died for lack of a second. In parliamentary procedures, somebody says something, makes a proposal, and it has to be seconded. And if it doesn't get seconded, then it dies. There can be no conversation. So it died for lack of a second, with some of the great leaders of the organization refusing to take up the issue of having folks of color represent themselves in helping to put together the national conference. Now, Miriam was a smart cookie, and at NCTE, the executive committee meets twice. It meets right before the convention, and then they have the time when the committee changes, when those who are stepping out step off and the new people come on board, and they all meet again right after the convention. After the convention, then Miriam Chaplin proposed it again.
That was
and
smart.
this time it passed. But even though it passed, there was someone who said, and I don't know who it is and it doesn't matter, that they didn't need any watchdogs, because of course they were so liberal in advance but our idea was never, and when we first got to Urbana, Roseanne in particular got a lot of flack from the secondary section, because their perception was that we were there to censor them, which was never what we wanted to do. Was to respond. If somebody said something foolish, like there was a panel that had a title, do you have to be one to teach one? It's a legitimate concern, but phrasing it that way is not legitimate. So, okay, we're not going to censor it. We're not going to say no to it. We created another panel that responded to that notion. So we saw what the tendencies were, and sometimes those tendencies were decidedly, let's just say, stereotyped. And we created new panels. So at first, there was some hostility to our presence. At one point, we were asked why at Urbana, why we didn't eat lunch with the rest of the folks, why we all hung out together, the Black and the Latino, the rainbow folks. And someone like me, I was in a decidedly white university. It's a little less so now, but it was at that time in the 90 percentile, about 96% white. And so here I am finally around folks of color who are also intellectually interested in the same things I am. I'm going to go talk to more white folks. I do that every day. It was good to be with it. But someone who was in a position of authority at that time said, why, we're just trying to do away with the sins of the past in demanding that we go and be with them during lunch. So you see the good intentions, but not understanding the import of what they were saying. And one of the members of the Black Caucus said, they're not our sins. So we shouldn't be punished for your sins. And we like hanging out together because this is our one opportunity. So there's all kinds of stories that early on. Much of that, until very recently, had started to dissipate. We had a champion, somebody who watched out for us at NCTE headquarters doggedly and sometimes even to the point of really aggravating people, and that was Dr. Sandra Gibbs. I don't know the story, and I will never know the story because the person who made the decision has died, and he refused to tell me. But she was asked to retire. In other words, later in her career, she was essentially fired in that kind of respectful way. But fired is fired, even if you say asked to retire.
Hold on.
I heard that. Boom. I don't know. So yeah, so publications, no, because we didn't exist. I mean, Richard Rodriguez wasn't one of us. He wasn't an academic at all. Mike Rose did a beautiful job of speaking for us, but he was still speaking for us. It wasn't us speaking. And the others who were parts of the group were not comp people. And it's, I've been at this now 35 years, and it's only recently that I realized I am probably the first Latino comp guy. I mean, which is kind of funny since we've been here for a little while, like even before the British got here.
Yeah.
Been here for quite a while.
Yeah. Those, a few elections ago, they said, oh, we've just discovered the Latinos. No, damn it. We've been here all along. We were here before you. We were talking to the Indians when you were still in England. Damn you, in Germany. You guys, we're not new. Been here.
No, yeah. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, not that bothers me. Next question. I'm sorry. I'll go on forever.
Question? It's not on the list. I'm curious about it. To contribute. Is because you're saying
No, you broke up, so you got to say it again.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Can you hear?
Now.
Okay, I am echoing. Let's see what happens. Can you hear me?
Now you froze, and now you're back.
Okay. How is it now?
It's like watching a foreign movie. Your lips are moving different from your speaking.
Oh no. Okay.
Let's
see how we should. Maybe we do a part two.
We can hang up and call again.
Let's try that.
Oh no, but now you're clear.
Are you sure?
Yeah, right now you're clear.
Okay, let's go ahead and try it.
Okay.
That's what I get for trying. What I want to know is that since you're basically the first Latino correct?
Yeah, I that is decidedly Rhett and Comp.
Okay.
And Rhett and Comp as this American thing, because of course there are many Latino rhetoricians. Somebody had proposed something, and it's like they forgot that all of Latin America also teaches rhetoric. So we're not the first, we're not it. But we're talking about the U.S. So U.S., the field of rhetoric and comp foresees, what's her name will actually know. Christina Kirklighter.
Yes.
But I think I'm it. I think, and she has done the history. So there were many people who were involved in the Hispanic caucus and the Chicano caucus, almost all at NCTE though, or all in NCTE, with the exception of Chris Gutierrez y Rosan Gonzalez. But neither one of them are Red Comp people.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
They were associated discipline where they weren't literate.
Well, you broke up, but you asked about the disciplines, yeah?
Right.
Yeah, Rosan Gonzalez is a linguist. And what she did was she looked at the linguistics of translators in federal court.
That's right.
What the translators do, and she was doing mainly Navajo and Latinos and Spanish, but as a linguist. And Chris Gutierrez is probably one of the biggest names right now in bilingual education at the elementary school level. But again, it's not comp.
Okay, makes sense. Am I
Am I coming through?
You're still coming through.
Okay, good.
Okay, good.
Here's the next question.
What
Positive
What
or
positive
negative action
negative
have you
action
seen
have you
for
seen
these
or
or in being inclusive Latino scholars in being inclusive?
Okay.
Being inclusive have made stands out in terms of inclusion in both organizations.
Well, I've already told the story of exclusion. And that was basically the inclusion was being proposed by the chair of 4Cs at the time. Yeah, she became president of NCTE later. But among those who took part in not bringing us in were also leaders within 4Cs. I'm thinking of one in particular, but I don't want to name him. Now, in terms of inclusion, now Roseanne put out a lot of personal money for this, but we used to have, I don't know if they still have at NCTE, the Black Caucus and Hispanic Caucus Presents. And it was a major show. And it included, the first one I ever went to included Hinojosa, as big a Mexican-American poet as you could have in those days. And we had some music. The year that I was chair, I brought in some bomba and plena players from the Puerto Rican Cultural Center in Chicago. Which there's a funny story there too, because I said we would have salsa, and Jackie Biddle ran around saying I forgot to tell her to order tortillas and salsa. No, different salsa.
That's different. Very different.
It's cool though. It's cool. You know, what the hell? How was she supposed to know? But yeah, but she found the mistake I had made. You forgot to tell me. No, I didn't forget to tell you nothing, man. We're just gonna go out and have fun. I have seen more. You see, part of the reason why I ended up writing Bootstraps was because of these people that I met at 4Cs and NCTE. Almost exclusively because of them, because the intentions were always good. The real bigots were few and far between. But for all of the good intention, there was also this phenomenal ignorance. So that good heart, wrong thing. And it happened a lot. And I think it still happens. I don't think, I know it still happens. It still happens. Their hearts are in the right place. They want us included. They do see us as a part of the organization, as part of the profession, as part of the teaching world. They see all of that, and there isn't the hostility that we're seeing in local politics or national politics right now. We don't get that from the profession. But we have this phenomenal degree of ignorance that, despite the good intentions, end up being bigoted in their effect. So it's not bigotry by intention, but bigotry by effect. The ways in which, and one of the biggest problems we have that, and it was something, I wanted to address long ago when I was chair of the Latino caucus, which I did that. I was head of the Latino caucus, I don't know, a long time, 9 years maybe. And then Ceci took it over after me. And it's kind of funny. We've had a Cuban involved a lot. So I'm thinking Raleigh.
Sorry.
Yeah. So what I wanted us to do, what I wanted to have recognized, and I still don't think it is that we don't just do our kind. That's an unintentional bigotry that's still there. That if it's a Latino, the Latino is speaking about Latino things. And since the Latino is speaking about Latino things, we don't have any reason, they're saying, to go to that panel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agree with that.
I'm interested in other larger things. Without recognizing that we do rhetoric, we do Shakespeare. I mean, shit. We're American academics. Our heritage is Latino, and it's a prideful heritage. It's not one that we put into the background. We're proud of our heritage. We're proud of our abilities to move in more than one tongue, to move in more than one culture. But we are Americans, and most of us have been subjected to American education. Why wouldn't we know all the same folks that the white folks know? And why wouldn't we be interested in those things as well? So that, I think, is a problem that continues. The degree to which we are ghettoized, intellectually ghettoized. Latinos do Latino stuff. Now, it's true for me now, but before I did that, I wanted to be recognized for what I could do with the Greeks and the Romans and all that stuff. I said, "Now, man, I'm legit, even by your definition of legit." And I think that is, I still think that is the biggest, our biggest hurdle, the degree to which we are pigeonholed, ghettoized. And because of that, and because it's seen as an exclusive self-interest, we don't get enough of the folks who really need to hear us, hearing us. I am some sort of an exception to that, but it wasn't easy, and I have been at this game a very long time.
Do you want to comment about the bootstraps or not?
The reception, did you say?
Yeah, the reception.
Well, there's a funny way to put that, and a couple of funny ways to put that. The book has done outrageously well. According to Academia EDU, according to them, I have counted out, because I needed to for annual review, 54 different countries that read and respond to that book. So it's done really well. It's available in several languages, and I get emails from folks from all over, including, when they're Latinos from Latin America, I get it. But Italians like it. People from Scandinavia like it, which I really don't get. But the one I really don't get was some person from Kuala Lumpur. Why? It's cool. I'm proud of it. I'll brag about it when I write my annual review, but why? I've got a student coming, she'll start here this fall from Guam, who is a Filipina in Guam. So she's a person of color in the Guamanian, who are people of color in the American. I mean, it's a very interesting thing. And she's here to work with me because she knows my work in Guam, and has said very flattering things that I can't say without sounding like I'm really arrogant. And I am, but I don't want to sound it.
It sounds like you have a reason.
Say again?
It sounds like you have a reason. That's quite a bit.
54 countries.
Wow.
And so, but here's the interesting thing. At first, there's this person who was a big shot at NCTE when the book first came out. And she came up to me to tell me that she loved the book. She's just started it, and she loved the book. Well, the book is intentionally starts out very personal and then gets more and more theoretical as the book develops. And I did that. And well, she hadn't finished the book. When she finished the book, she stopped talking to me for a long time. And so she liked the Pobrecito stories, right? Which is what made Richard Rodriguez so damn famous too, Pobrecito. But when we get onto the real politics, that I'm not okay with all of this, and that there are things, that's when things start to change. For the first few years, even though that book was phenomenally well received, I got 2 national awards for it. I mean, the second award I thought was a mistake. I got the letter, it was in '95, I got the letter telling me I'd gotten the second award, and I thought, you stupid people, you already gave me the award. And I didn't realize it was the second award. So even though it was well received, and there were some who really wanted to talk about the politics, John Trimber, Lester Fegley, they wanted to talk about what I'm talking about, not the Pobrecito story. But for the first 5-6 years, maybe, everybody wanted to talk about the writing as opposed to what I had written. And even though I had a big enough ego to be flattered by that and was willing to talk about it, after a while it got on my nerves. I'm glad y'all think I'm a good writer. I'm glad you like the way I do this. How about what I said? And that took a while. It took a while before that became the issue. I had a student, I forget who's, it's one of us. One person from the Latino caucus, somebody you'll ask at CSE. But one of us had their students reading Bootstraps and writing me emails about it. And one student asked me if I wrote poorly on purpose. Did you write bad on purpose? Because I switched voices in this thing. He wasn't sophisticated enough yet to see that it, but it looked like it was intentional. So why the hell would I do that? And confuse everybody. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the answer. It's done really well, and to the degree that there's been negatives, not really negatives, just more like ignoring. I never got a bad review of that book, not ever. Some of the reviews were better than others, but never a bad review. And now I'm echoing.
Let's see if it will stop.
Now you're echoing too. Want to hang up and try again?
Let's do that. Yeah.